The Forsaken Heir. Previous episodes are available on playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 10. Gerald was also stunned. Thompson's villa is the most valuable property in the hands of the entire White family. This house is owned by Solomon, the current owner of the White family and the uncle of Gerald. Solomon, Fred White's father, is currently the head of the White family, while Gerald's father is only the second in command. This villa, let alone Gerald, even Gerald's dad is greedy, but there is no way, their family simply can't afford such an expensive villa. Hearing that the uncle even gave this villa to Charlie, Gerald was also extremely shocked and uncomfortable, and immediately said to Wendy, "Wait a moment, I will ask my uncle." Wendy hung up the phone, gritted her teeth and looked at Charlie, and questioned, "Charlie, what can you do to trick this villa from Uncle?" Charlie said lightly, "Mr. Solomon chased me to give away this villa to me." "You nonsense!" Wendy blurted out suddenly, "You have nothing to do with the White family. How could Uncle White give you such an expensive house for no reason? You must have used some shameful means." At this time, Gerald called Wendy and said, "Wendy, my uncle seemed to be busy, so he just hung up my phone after saying a word." Charlie sneered, and directly took out the phone to turn on the speakerphone and dialed Solomon's number. With a beep, the phone was connected instantly. Wendy was stunned on the spot. "Mr. Wade." Solomon's voice was full of flattery. "Mr. Wade should have visited the villa at Thompson. I wonder if Mr. Wade is satisfied." Charlie said directly, "I saw the villa, and it's not bad overall, it is interesting." Solomon hurriedly said, "Mr. Wade, you like it?" Charlie said calmly, "I just called to tell you that I'm quite satisfied with the villa. If you have any needs, please tell me at any time, and I will try my best to solve it. Try to make Mr. Wade satisfied." The crowd around was silent and in shock. Unexpectedly, this villa was actually given to Charlie by Solomon. Why? Unexpectedly, Solomon, who had to be respectful even after meeting his fiancée, would kneel and lick Charlie's rubbish like a dog. This made Wendy feel hot on her face, and she couldn't help her face. She finally couldn't help but asked aloud to Charlie's cell phone, "Uncle White, I am Gerald's fiancée Wendy. You will never give the villa to Charlie for no reason. What is the reason?" "Hey, what are you? You deserve to ask about my personal affairs," Solomon said coldly. Wendy's face was hot. Charlie said lightly, "Solomon, you should explain to them, otherwise, they will think I lied to you." "Okay," Solomon said immediately, "since Mr. Charlie has said it, let me explain to the public that I owe Mr. Charlie a great favor, so I gifted this villa. I would like to thank the clowns if they do dare to doubt Mr. Charlie. I will definitely not let it go." Wendy was aggrieved for a while. How could she have been scolded so severely? Her face flushed, and she almost cried aggrieved. Seeing that Wendy was so aggrieved and crying, Noah Wilson's face couldn't get through, and he coughed to please and said, "Ms. White, Wendy is still a child. She is also curious and has no other meaning." Solomon ignored him and said respectfully, "Mr. Charlie, do you need me to explain anything?" "That's it." Charlie nodded. "Then I won't bother Mr. Charlie, please call me whenever you have to." Charlie let out a and hung up the phone. "Charlie, is this really the villa the White family gave you?" Jacob reacted and opened his mouth in surprise. "Dad, yes." Charlie smiled. "This you?" Jacob stammered, feeling like he was dreaming. Claire hurriedly supported him. "Dad, go sit over there and take some rest." Now that Mr. White explained the situation, everyone knows about the villa. Charlie got it right. Claire emphasized the words "just gain," specifically speaking to a group of relatives in the Wilson family. Horia clutched her heart in disbelief, and muttered, "This White family is really a big deal. If they want to give a mansion of hundreds of millions, why not give it to us?" Not only she couldn't figure it out, others also found it incredible, and even Harold was jealous. They can't afford such a mansion for 10 lifetimes. But why did the pie that fell from the sky hit Charlie, a wasteful body? What kind of luck is this? Noah's face was pale. It didn't matter that he was ignored by Solomon, but he felt that this villa should be his daughter's property in the future, and it was in Charlie's hands in a blink of an eye, making him totally unacceptable. He looked at his crying daughter and then at Charlie, feeling even more sullen in his heart. He hadn't looked down on Jacob for a long time, but now he was crushed by a daughter-in-law. What a shame! Noah said sternly, "Charlie, tell everyone, what kind of favor does Mr. White owe you? You are not going to help Mr. White under the banner of the Wilson family." Charlie said lightly, "This is my personal business, so please tell me." He turned around and said to Lebo, "It's getting late, let's see off the guests." Noah Wilson claims to be an elder, but in his eyes, he's not even a bullshit. Uncle Lebo nodded respectfully and said to the crowd, "I'm sorry, I will send everyone to the door." Noah touched a grey nose, hummed with anger, and walked out with a calm face. Wendy stared at Charlie bitterly and resentfully, and then walked out. The family almost broke down in their hearts. How can they not be so high? How they used to look at the live-in son-in-law, now unexpectedly he hit the big luck. At this time, Lebo closed the door and went back to the guest room without disturbing Charlie's family. "Harold's family is gone," Claire then asked. "Charlie, now you should tell us the truth. White always owes you something." Charlie hesitated for a while, still not thinking about how to explain it. A few days ago, the White family pulled Jinghai into the game and wanted to unify the Oris Hill metaphysics, but Jinghai was struck to death by his own thunder order. The White family was afraid that he would condemn them as well, so the host sent him the gift of Villa to admit defeat. They were also afraid that Charlie would be angry and would kill them. After thinking about it, Charlie said, "I helped White's family see Feng Shui, so they gave me this villa. Hey! Claire and her parents were shocked. Charlie, are you helping people with feng shui? Claire's eyes widened. Charlie nodded, yes. Claire asked puzzledly, where did you learn feng shui? Charlie smiled and said, on TV, there are many feng shui programs on TV. Claire panicked and blurted out, you are crazy. Watching TV and dare to show people feng shui, and dare to accept such an expensive villa. Seeing Claire panicked, Charlie smiled and said with relief, my wife, don't worry about the villa, the king will never come to trouble. Jacob kept shaking his head, no, last time you helped the Qin family with feng shui and spent hundreds of millions to procure those shells, and now the White family is looking for you again. These two families are both reputable families in Oris Hill City. Just your little knowledge of feng shui. Sooner or later we have to wear clothes. In case they are held accountable, our family will have to follow suit. As he said, Jacob said hurriedly, you should return the villa to the White family soon, otherwise, if someone tries to settle after the fall, we are all over. At this moment, Charlie's mother-in-law Elaine blurted out, what's the return? This big villa was given to Charlie by Mr. White, and it was not stolen by Charlie. Why pay it back? In the future, this is our home, our villa. Elaine had never thought in her life that she would have the opportunity to live in such a luxurious villa. Now that the villa has been acquired, Jacob said that he would go back. Isn't this like killing her? Claire shouted helplessly, Mom! We can't collect this kind of stuff, it will be very troublesome in the future. Trouble you? Elaine snorted disdainfully, then looked at Charlie and said flatly, oh, Charlie, I didn't expect you to have such a great ability to earn a big villa. Elaine smiled all over her face and said excitedly, you are really a good son-in-law. If you go to show others feng shui early, wouldn't our family be rich already? Jacob really couldn't stand it, and said, wife, this is not about the villa. Even if Charlie shows them feng shui, he can accept a villa like this? If the White family regrets it in the future, won't they hate us? Elaine jumped 3 feet high and pointed to Jacob's nose and cursed, don't tell me those who have nothing, I have suffered from poverty all my life with you, and now it's hard to live in a big villa, don't you want it? I tell you, if you dare to let your son-in-law return back this villa, I will divorce you. You are a mouse giving the cat 3 losses, you don't want to make money. Jacob was so angry that he couldn't speak, and sat down on the sofa. Charlie smiled and said, Dad, don't worry, this villa will not be taken away. Good son-in-law, you are really capable. Elaine looked around, touching antiques for a while, painting and calligraphy for a while, and was overjoyed. Let him show off Noah Wilson. Now I live in a big villa. They can only buy a flat outside. It's really 30 years. 30 years in that dilapidated house. Claire couldn't stand it anymore, so she pulled Charlie to the side and whispered, you tell me the truth, what is going on?" Charlie said, "My wife. Don't worry, it's definitely a legitimate income. But now I am inconvenient to say that I will tell you if I have a chance in the future. Since you said that there is a reason, then I believe you." Claire thought for a while and said, "But look at Feng Shui, you still don't do it again, lest my dad and I be worried about it." Charlie took the opportunity to take her hand and said, "Don't worry, I won't do things that worry you. Dad has been urging to have children. What should you do if I have an accident? Don't give me poor mouth." Claire blushed, and quickly broke free. At this moment, Elaine happily came down the stairs and shouted while walking, "When I return from a trip next week, I will call all the people I know and come to see the big villa I bought." Claire said, "Mom, the villa was given to Charlie. He is our son-in-law, and the villa that is his, is also ours." Elaine triumphantly shook the bracelet in her hand. "I have already sent a WeChat moments, look at this bracelet, there is also the big villa, others will like me." Charlie looked at Elaine's bracelet. Qin Gang gave it to him and he intended to give it to his wife. He didn't want to make it cheap to his mother-in-law. The royal mansion. Gerald stood in the hall and reported what he had learned on the phone to his father. After speaking, he hesitated for a while, then raised his head and said, "Dad, isn't the uncle confused? Such an expensive villa, if I haven't lived in a day, I will give it to Charlie, that stupid bird. You have to persuade him." The Gerald's father was sitting on the Grand Master's chair, his face solemn. Gerald returned to report, saying that his uncle had given the villa to Charlie. He didn't believe it, so he went to ask his elder brother Solomon for verification, but he didn't expect this to be true. Moreover, Solomon also downplayed the reason for giving away the villa, only owing to Charlie a favor. What kind of favor? Let the extremely stingy Solomon give away such an expensive mansion? The king said with a cold face, "I have already called your uncle. He seems to have a very determined attitude. He wants to return the villa, which is unlikely." Gerald gritted his teeth and said, "Dad, do you think Charlie has any problems? We have been investigating for so long, but we can't find any real news about him, which is strange." The prince pondered for a while, and then said slowly, "Your uncle has been shrewd throughout his life, and he will never indulge Charlie for anything, so no matter what problem Charlie has, in short, this person, you must not provoke in the near future. I will check with your uncle in the evening to see what background this person has." "Yes." At the same time, Noah Wilson and his family are suing the old Mrs. Wilson. Wendy snorted and cried with tears, "Grandma, Charlie, I don't know what means he used to deceive the White family's villa in Thompson. It is a villa worth more than 100 million. Moreover, he got the villa and didn't take the initiative to honor you, and drove our family out of the villa. Isn't this too much?" Old Mrs. Wilson sat on the main seat, her expression was majestic, and her expression was also very dissatisfied with a cold snort. This kid Charlie really doesn't understand the rules. Yet, Mom, he is so shameless. Noah said with a calm face. He, as the son-in-law of the Wilson family, naturally should know that any good things in the Wilson family must be enjoyed by you first. The location of your villa is remote and the decoration is old. It should have been replaced a long time ago. If he really has you in his heart, he must first give you the Thompson first-class villa. Let you enjoy it first. As soon as these words were spoken, Mrs. Wilson's eyes suddenly lit up. Wilson's villa has been her living for more than 10 years. Although it looks impressive, it is already an old property. Coupled with the relatively poor location, it can sell for 10 to 20 million. Thompson's villa is 100 times better than here. The Lady Wilson herself is very greedy, but she can't afford it because she has no money. But when she heard that Charlie had the largest villa of Thompson first class, and Noah's fanfare, she also felt that this villa should really be enjoyed by her, the head of the family. When the old Mrs. Wilson was dreaming of living in the Thompson villa, Noah Wilson rubbed her hands and said with a long sigh, "Mom, I plan to send someone to East Cliff in the near future, and invite Elsa's family to come as a guest. Then tell them cryptically, hoping that they will engage Elsa to Harold. What do you think?" Dong's family Mrs. Wilson sighed and said, "Last time Harold left Elsa and ran away by himself, I guess Elsa has a big opinion of him now." Noah said, "I think this little thing is harmless. This family and that family are themselves a complement to each other. What everyone values is the future development prospects. Although our Wilson family is not comparable to the Dong family, we have got the Emgrand group. The cooperation between the two parties is still promising in the future. Maybe the Dong family will agree to this marriage." Old Mrs. Wilson thought for a while, nodded and said, "In this case, you try to invite them to see if the Dong family are interested in coming to Oris Hill as a guest." "Okay." Noah hurriedly said again, "Mom, the Dong family is a big family. If we don't have a decent villa and we lose face in front of the Dong family, it won't work." After speaking, he said again, "If you can get the Thompson first-class villa from Charlie's hands, then the Dong family will be a guest. Seeing the Thompson first-class villa, you will also take a high look at our Wilson family." "You said what?" Old Mrs. Wilson nodded. "People rely on clothing, exuberance of gold, and living standards in a villa of more than 100 million worth. It will naturally greatly improve the family's face." In addition, she was coveting Charlie's first-class Thompson villa in her heart. This was just a chance to start. So she said majestically, "Bring your brother's family to the old house tomorrow. I will tell them personally." Brother Harold glanced at each other, and was delighted. Now Jacob's family relies on the company for food, and Jacob's family is under the family. As long as the Lady Wilson speaks, how can Jacob's family stand? The Lady Wilson asked them to surrender the villa. Dare they say a word? With the Lady Wilson's preference for her own home, as long as this villa comes from Charlie's hands, it will be her own in the future. Early the next morning, Jacob led his daughter and son-in-law and hurried to the old house of the Wilson family. Claire opened the car door and asked, "Dad, Grandma specifically called you to go there. Didn't she say anything important?" "I'll talk about it if I go," Jacob said, "and your Uncle Noah will also come along." Charlie's brows frowned, and seeing the battle, it seemed that there was nothing good. Claire said angrily, "What else can happen? I guess it must be the villa." "About the villa, Charlie will explain it to your grandma in a while." Jacob didn't think too much, got into the car and urged Charlie to drive. At 9:30, the car drove to the door of Wilson's old house. The family walked into the hall. Charlie glanced around, frowning slightly. He saw the old Mrs. Wilson sitting in the middle chair, with Noah standing next to her, and Harold brother and sister standing on the other side. In addition to them, there are several relatives of the elders of the Wilson family sitting on both sides of the main room, and several younger generations of the Wilson family standing on both sides, staring at them. Isn't it just the trivial matter of traveling that has a three-counseling framework? Jacob is, as his name suggests, he is very honest at ordinary times, and he can't beat a bullshit with 3 sticks. Now when he saw this pose, he shrank half of his head, called Mom tremblingly, and then called Big Brother with a smile. Noah Wilson didn't seem to hear him and ignored him. Old Mrs. Wilson nodded lightly. Jacob asked tentatively, "Mom, you called me today. Let me ask you, what's the matter with Thompson's villa?" Old Mrs. Wilson asked coldly. Jacob said quickly, that villa was given to Charlie by President White. Charlie helped him see Feng Shui before. Telling the Feng Shui. Harold sneered, and said in a weird manner, "If you look at Feng Shui, you can see a luxurious mansion. All of us in the Wilson family should stop working, and we will all deceive to cheat money." There was a low laughter in the hall. Listening to the ridicule of the relatives, Jacob was embarrassed and could only laugh. On the contrary, Noah laughed twice, and made a rounding up, "Mom, no matter what Charlie is, President White has also explained it. It is indeed a gift for him. This matter is also considered to be clear, young brother, there is no need to explain." Jacob gave his eldest brother a grateful look, somewhat flattered. The eldest brother usually dismissed himself at all, but it was unprecedented to help him speak today. Noah smiled slightly and turned to Mrs. Wilson and said, "Mom, you don't need to ask how the villa came. Anyway, Mr. White himself said that it was given to Charlie, so we have nothing to worry about." "Yet." Mrs. Wilson nodded and said to Jacob, "Jac, your eldest brother wants to marry High Boy into Dong family. It's Harold marrying Elsa from the Dong family. What do you think of this matter?" "This is a good thing," Jacob said with a smile. "The Dong family is a well-known family in the capital. If we can get married with the Dong family, it will also help our Wilson family." A good thing is a good thing, Mrs. Wilson sighed with a long sigh, but, our family, compared with Dong's family, that's really a far cry. Even if your eldest brother has this heart, he doesn't have the face to talk to Dong's family. Jacob nodded seriously and said the truth, Mom, to tell the truth, I also think Elsa should not look towards this favorably. Harold's expression was extremely ugly, and he blurted out, Uncle, what do you mean by this? Only then did Jacob realize that he had said something wrong, and hurriedly changed his words, Oh, I didn't mean that. I meant to say that compared with the Dong family, our Wilson family is indeed far behind. Old Mrs. Wilson said indifferently, People depend on clothes, and Buddha depends on gold. If we live in the best villa in Oris Hill, after the Dong family comes, we can leave a good impression. Jacob asked in surprise, Mom, are you going to change houses? Old Mrs. Wilson said lightly, I want to change to a better one, but unfortunately I don't have that much money. When Jacob heard this, he hurriedly said, If Mom needs money, I still have $1 million. Old Mrs. Wilson coldly snorted, A villa can be tens of millions or hundreds of millions at every turn. Is $1 million enough? With that, she deliberately changed her conversation and said, Jac, doesn't your family have a ready-made villa in Thompson? Yes. Jacob didn't know, so he said blankly, What's wrong? What's the matter? The old Mrs. Wilson looked upset, and said, I am your mother. You can bear to see me living in this old house for so many years? Now that you have a Thompson first-class villa, shouldn't you bring it here? Honor me as a mother, let me live in that villa first. Jacob was taken aback for a moment, and hurriedly said, Mom, the villa was given to Charlie by the White family, not for me. The old Mrs. Wilson became impatient, and she was too lazy to conceal it, and said directly, Charlie is the son-in-law of the Wilson family, and the villa the White family gave him must also belong to the Wilson family. As the head of the Wilson family, don't I have the right yet? Do you live in Wilson's villa? Charlie next to him sneered slightly. He didn't say a word just now, just knowing that there must be nothing good about this family gathering today. It turned out that the Lady Wilson just wanted his villa. Jacob understood now, sweating even more anxiously, stammering speechless, looking back at Charlie, eyes full of embarrassment. Noah Wilson said triumphantly, Jac, you are Charlie's father-in-law. If he dares not listen to what you say, isn't he too arrogant at home? What status do you have? That's right. Mrs. Wilson nodded in satisfaction, her eyes full of greed. She couldn't help feeling the excitement deep in her heart when she thought of living in the big villa of Thompson Community. Claire couldn't help it, and said coldly, Grandma, the villa is not owned by our Wilson family. If you want to take the villa, you have to ask Charlie's opinion. If Charlie is unwilling to give it, no one is qualified to ask for it. Old Mrs. Wilson frowned and looked at Claire, feeling very unhappy in her heart. Talking. The old Mrs. Wilson looked at Charlie coldly, and said unceremoniously, "This villa was given by the White family. You are just a live-in son-in-law, and you are not qualified to enjoy it. Tomorrow you go to the company's finance department to receive 100,000, your reward for dedicating the villa." The Lady Wilson's command-like tone gave no room for discussion. Noah said, "Charlie, 100,000 is a lot, you are a waste of money, I guess you have never seen so much money." Charlie slowly raised his head and sneered from his nostrils, "For 100,000, you want to forcefully buy a villa worth more than 130 million in Thompson? Old Mrs. Wilson, you are too shameless." His voice rang loudly and clearly reached the ears of everyone present. The crowd was shocked, and the entire hall was suddenly silent. All eyes were fixed on Charlie. Surprised, shocked, incredible Claire was also shocked. She didn't expect Charlie to be so tough. Old Mrs. Wilson turned blue with anger. She patted the table again, and shouted sharply, "Even you dared to stand up? Come here, get this rubbish Charlie out. No respect. It is extremely arrogant." Harold coldly scolded, "Grandma, I think he should respect the family law. He is a live-in son-in-law, dare to be arrogant like this, it is the opposite." Jacob looked at Charlie, but did not dare to speak at all. "Respect and humble." Charlie sneered from his nostrils, and said coldly, "The distinction between respect and inferiority is to treat people who are worthy of respect. Among you present, except for my father-in-law Jacob, who is worthy of my respect. This group of people is extremely greedy, he has long wanted to endure it." Old Mrs. Wilson, as Jacob's mother, screamed at her second son, without paying attention. Noah Wilson, as the eldest brother of Jacob, has never looked down upon him. Not only that, but also wants to take everything from his brother. As for him, the live-in son-in-law of the Wilson family, this group of people has never seen it directly. Even Charlie didn't pay attention to him at all. It was only Jacob who cared about his family and couldn't bear to give up. And Claire has always been bullied, and the identity of the cooperator with the emigrant group has always been missed by everyone in the Wilson family. The entire Wilson family was firmly crushed on their heads. Any bullying? Charlie looked at his wife and put it down for the time being, but he didn't expect this group of people to be so shameless that they wanted to take their villa. "Charlie, how dare you talk to Grandma like this?" Harold shouted angrily, "I have to teach you today." "Only you?" Charlie sneered and said contemptuously, "Harold, to me Charlie, you are just a poor worm, humble like an ant. Presumptuous." The old Mrs. Wilson stood up suddenly and sternly shouted, "Charlie, you kneel down and apologized, and then give up the villa, I will forgive you this time. Otherwise, I will let Claire and you now divorce. I will drive you out of Wilson's house and leave you on the streets. You can't survive." Claire, who kept her head down, raised her head abruptly, stood in front of Charlie, and said, "I don't agree." Are you my grandmother? Or are you the patriarch of the Wilson family? You oppress me so much. Dad, bullying Charlie, do you still treat my family as your own family? I will never divorce Charlie. You. The old Mrs. Wilson almost turned her back in anger, pointed her finger at Claire's nose, and shouted at Jacob sharply, "Look at your good daughter," who turned her elbow out. "Let her kneel down together." Jacob slowly raised his head, staring directly at the old Mrs. Wilson. After changing his previous cringe, Jacob's expression was also very dissatisfied. Noah froze for a moment. His second brother is usually very useless and is led by a strict wife at home. He didn't dare to talk back in front of Mrs. Wilson, but now he dares to look directly at Mrs. Wilson with contempt. He shouted sharply, "Second brother, don't you hurry up to tell your daughter-in-law to kneel down and let mother calm down." And Jacob, who is usually the timidest, turned blue at this time, and said, "Brother, someone gave Charlie the villa. What he wants to do with it is his business. Who my daughter married. You can't control things. This villa is worth more than 1 billion, almost more than the assets of the entire Wilson family. Why do you want to occupy it? You shameless son!" Old Mrs. Wilson was trembling with anger, grabbed the teacup on the mahogany table and threw it at Jacob. Jacob didn't dodge or hide, and was hit by a bang on his head with a teacup, leaving a big bruise. The tea dripped down his face, and the tea dregs splashed all over his body. He remained motionless. "Dad!" Claire yelled heartbreakingly, her eyes suddenly red. She can be humiliated, but she cannot tolerate others to humiliate her father. Jacob let the tea flow on his face, raised his head coldly, and said, "Mom, if there is nothing else, we will leave now." After speaking, he said, "Let's go," to Charlie and Claire next to him, then turned around and walked outside the door without looking back. Claire wiped away tears, glanced bitterly at the people in the hall, and turned away without hesitation. Charlie didn't even look at everyone, and turned around to leave. Noah Wilson was so mad, he was about to run away. Noah Wilson discussed with Mrs. Wilson last night and carefully planned all this. Today, he also specially invited the respected members of the Wilson family, and put on a 3-counsel trial. Half of it was a temptation and half a threat. He wanted Jacob to voluntarily hand over the villa. If he doesn't take the initiative to hand in, force him to do it. According to his thoughts, Jacob was usually the most timid, and his mother would shiver all over his body when she uttered a rebuke. When the time came, he would definitely offer the villa's hands honestly. As for Claire, he didn't care at all. What right does a married woman have? What's more, still married to a rubbish. As for the waste Charlie, let alone. The live-in son-in-law has no status in the Wilson family, and he doesn't even have the qualifications to speak. If asked to let him hand over the villa, he must hand it over honestly. However, Noah did not expect that Jacob was so anxious that he even dared to talk back to the Lady Wilson. Claire, a granddaughter, didn't even listen to the Lady Wilson. Even the rubbish Charlie dared to point to the Lady Wilson's nose and call her shameless. Your family is really the opposite. Noah Wilson gritted his teeth and turned around and said, Mom, you can't let them go like this. If you let it go today, in the future, our Wilson family will not be riding on their heads. What majesty will you have in the Wilson family in the future? Mrs. Wilson's face is extremely ugly. She has a strong desire to control their life. After the father's death, she kept the entire Wilson family in her own hands and did not allow anyone to challenge her authority. However, she did not expect that today she would suffer the disobedience of Claire's family of 3, which made her resent. She roared hysterically, "The Wilson family is unfortunately out of this family. You are all from my Wilson family. As long as I don't die for a day, you have to listen to me." Having said that, the old Mrs. Wilson shouted sharply, "Close the door, family law will take care of you." She has absolute authority in the Wilson family, and Jacob, who is usually the most submissive to her, dares to disobey her today. Among them were granddaughter and daughter-in-law, who didn't even look at her. I don't know how Jacob taught his children to be so unfilial. If not severely punished today, what is the majesty of the head of the family? Besides, if they were to leave like this today, how could the Thompson first-class villa be taken over? She lived half of her life and never expected to live in such a villa. Now this villa is in the hands of her son's family, and she has to grab anything and enjoy it. Therefore, in any case, they must be asked to surrender the villa. Even if they want to leave the Wilson family, they must leave the villa. As a result, a group of bodyguards and subordinates immediately surrounded the 3 people. Charlie stood in the courtyard of the old mansion, with a vigorous aura. He looked at the bodyguards coldly and shouted angrily, "Who dares to take a step forward? Don't blame me for being impolite. You are a rubbish thing, dare to show off here." One of the bodyguards shouted angrily and hit Charlie with a stick. Charlie's eyes were cold. He directly grabbed the eyebrow stick in his hand and hit the opponent's leg easily. The bodyguard felt a strong attack from the bend of his leg, and he knelt in front of Charlie uncontrollably. His leg was broken. Charlie didn't even look at him, and with a harder hand, he broke the eyebrow stick into 2 with a pop. Dang! Charlie directly threw the broken stick to the ground. The people in the yard were shocked. This eyebrow stick is made of the hardest yellow elm wood, which is extremely hard. Even 2 sturdy men can hardly break with all their strength. But in Charlie's hands, it turned out to be like crispy noodles, so weak. After practicing the 9 profound heaven scriptures, Charlie's strength has become stronger and stronger, and these bodyguards are simply not opponents. Seeing Charlie's move, Jacob let out a sigh of relief. He didn't expect that his son-in-law should be so capable. It seems that today he and his daughter can leave the Wilson family safely. The bodyguards in the old house of the Wilson family were all arranged by Noah Wilson. They were all his confidants. At this moment, seeing that he was very strong, everyone was a little flustered. Noah Wilson gritted his teeth and said, "Charlie, I didn't expect you to have learned some three-legged cat kung fu, but I see you alone. How to deal with so many hands? Give it to me together." "Yes. Let's go together and kill him." Harold also gritted his teeth, showing his face. He had suffered a loss in Charlie's hands long ago, so he planned to take revenge today. A group of bodyguards got the order and immediately rushed towards Charlie. Charlie ignored them, and when several bodyguards rushed over, he suddenly volleyed with a roundabout kick and kicked the two bodyguards out. Immediately afterwards, he brushed a few punches, and instantly knocked down the bodyguard who rushed in front. Claire, who was standing behind him, was stunned. She had no idea that Charlie, who gets along with her day and night, would be so good. Seeing his daughter's shocked expression, Jacob quickly explained, "Claire, when you usually go to work, Charlie is at home following the TV to practice martial arts." "He still practices martial arts?" Claire was even more incredible. Jacob said, "He knows a lot. Qin Gang asked him to do things last time." With that said, Jacob felt a little guilty when he saw Charlie fought against several bodyguards. The Wilson family had always underestimated Charlie, and let him stay at home to buy vegetables and cook, but Charlie was also a man, and he also had his own dignity. Which man is willing to wash and cook at home all his life? It seems that the family is ashamed of Charlie. At this moment, Charlie defeated several bodyguards in succession, without fear. There is also a mess in the courtyard. Wendy and the Lady Wilson ran into the house long ago to take shelter, and all men left in the courtyard. Harold next to him looked extremely annoyed. He didn't expect Charlie to be so good. Seeing Charlie gradually gain the upper hand, Harold gritted his teeth, bent over and picked up an axe, walked quietly over, while Charlie was kicking one of the bodyguards. When he saw the bodyguard, he slammed on head. "Charlie, be careful!" Claire screamed when she saw the sharp light of the axe. "Rubbish the silk, I hack you to death!" Harold's new hatred and old hatred rushed into his heart together and slashed fiercely. Jacob was so frightened that his legs became weak and he almost collapsed to the ground. They want Charlie's life. Axe flashes. When it was said that it was too late, Charlie suddenly raised his hand, and his two fingers accurately clamped the axe blade, turning his head coldly to look at Harold. Harold was shocked, trying hard to get the axe back. But Charlie's two fingers are like a vice. Even if he uses the strength of the steel axe pinched between the fingers will not move. Harold sweated coldly on his forehead and roared, "Rubbish, let me go." Charlie stared at him and sneered, "Harold, you stupid, you can't cut anyone, I think you are a waste. You watch Harold's murder like this." Seeing Harold wielding an axe to chop Charlie, Jacob recovered and roared angrily. However, the old Mrs. Wilson sitting on the high hall and Noah Wilson standing on the steps were not moved at all. He didn't even blink his eyelids. The other relatives of the Wilson family also said nothing, as if they had nothing to do with them. And the Lady Wilson only wants the villa at this time. Others, of course, eyeing it too. Sometimes, the older the person, the more greedy. In ancient times, the older the emperor, the more faint, the more arrogant and extravagant the older, and the bigger he was to build palaces and tombs for himself. And the older Mrs. Wilson is, the older she is, the more she hopes she can live better and enjoy it. The Lady Wilson wanted to live in a better place, die in a better place, and be buried in a better place. That indicates that in the next life she will have endless glory and wealth. Therefore, this is why the old people often want to prepare a thick coffin and a gorgeous grave for themselves. Therefore, for Mrs. Wilson, she must grab this $130 million villa. Even if Harold really killed Charlie, as long as he can get the villa, it doesn't matter. Jacob and Claire raised their heads to look at these people, and their hearts were completely cold. This is the so-called blood relative. For money, in order to rob the property, they did not hesitate to set up a situation to take it, and even wanted to kill his family. The eldest brother Noah said unhurriedly, "Second brother, Harold is still a child. He is playing around, why should you take it seriously? Besides, even if he really cut Charlie down, he is not from the Wilson family. Right? In his opinion, anyway, Charlie is a live-in son-in-law who has no power and no influence. Even if Harold chopped him out of his brain, he would lose more money. That would happen to get both people and money. That villa is worth $130 million. And now housing prices are still soaring. If they grab it, let the Lady Wilson live in first, and when the Lady Wilson dies, the villa is estimated to be worth at least $200 million. $200 million. Will they all be their own by then? With so much money, who can resist this temptation? I don't have a big brother like you. Jacob yelled angrily, picked up a mop, and hit Harold fiercely. Noah Wilson frowned, fearing that his son would be beaten, and immediately rushed to stop him. It's really against you, don't you want to face? Before he finished speaking, Jacob hit him with a stick. Fortunately, Noah dodged fast and only hit a stick on his shoulder, grinning in pain. Seeing that the father, who is usually honest and easy to deal with, was also so angry, Claire hated the ruthlessness of the Wilson family and worried about Charlie's safety. At this moment, Charlie held the axe blade, looked at Harold, with a hint of ridicule on his face, and whispered, "Harold, I tell you the truth, in fact, in my eyes, you are a waste of money." Not on spot. Charlie, an anger rushed to Harold's forehead, "You are a waste of money, how dare you speak to me like this?" Before he finished speaking, Charlie grabbed his wrist directly and broke it back. Hearing the crisp sound of pop, Harold burst out a heart-piercing scream. The palm of his right hand was actually broken back by Charlie 180 degrees, breaking it abruptly. Harold howled loudly and slumped on the ground with tears. Seeing that his grandson was broken by Charlie, Mrs. Wilson, who was leisurely watching Family Law, was suddenly angry. She was so angry that she rushed over, slapped Charlie's face with a slap in the face. When she slapped her hand into the air, Charlie suddenly turned around and said coldly, "Old thing, you want to die." After speaking, he slapped the Lady Wilson's face, and slapped the Lady Wilson's hind legs a few steps. At this moment, Charlie's eyes were extremely cold, and his whole body exuded a murderous aura. Although the old Mrs. Wilson was slapped in the face, she was so painful that she shuddered involuntarily. She covered her face and backed away in fright. The Lady Wilson who retreated didn't even dare to look at Charlie. This was the first time she saw him with such terrible eyes. The Wilson family looked stupid. What the hell? What the hell? This rubbish, even he dared to beat Lady Wilson. However, who can vent their anger for the Lady Wilson at this time? The injured bodyguard has fallen to the ground, and the remaining few, with a look of fear on their faces, do not dare to step forward. Although the old Mrs. Wilson wanted Charlie's life, she knew at this time that Charlie didn't know where to learn a kung fu. He was so powerful, she couldn't keep him. Claire could see her heart pounding. Her beautiful eyes followed Charlie all the time. Her mood was exceptionally strange, and her cheeks couldn't help but feel slightly hot. It was the first time she discovered that Charlie had such a sturdy and mighty side. In the past, in Claire's impression, Charlie only felt that he was taciturn, and knew nothing except buying vegetables and cooking. At this time, Charlie, seeing that no one dared to step forward, he raised his head, glanced at the crowd coldly, and shouted to the two bodyguards who were hiding away, "If you don't open the door now, I will break your neck." The two bodyguards frightened their legs and hurriedly opened the door of the house. Noah said angrily, "Mom, we can't let them go." Old Mrs. Wilson gritted her teeth, staring at Charlie, and said bitterly, "Let them go. Grandma, how can I let them go like this?" Harold yelled reluctantly, with hatred in his eyes, "He broke my hand, I'm going to chop him." Old Mrs. Wilson suppressed her anger and said coldly, "Shut up all of you." Noah Wilson said viciously, "Charlie, you hurt my son and broke my Wilson family rules. You will definitely regret it." The old Mrs. Wilson said word by word, "From now on, the Jacob family will be removed from the Wilson family, and they will no longer be my Wilson family's children." Jacob raised his head was broken and blood-stained on his face. He said blankly, "Such a Wilson family is not rare for me." Claire also nodded and said, "Yes, we are not unhappy." The Lady Wilson gritted her teeth and said, "Claire, you are really the money-losing people of my Wilson family. From now on, you have also been removed from the Wilson Group. The Wilson Group is now cooperating with the Emgrand Group, and it will surely become a big winner in the future. And you are unfilial granddaughter, you will have nothing to do with the Wilson group in the future. Get away from us as far away as possible. Claire said firmly, I don't care about it anymore. Dad, Charlie, let's go. Having said that, Claire and Charlie supported Jacob together, gave the Wilson family angry look, turned their heads and left. She walked out of the door without any nostalgia at all. Today she saw the true colors of these people clearly. The so-called relative is not as good as an outsider. If it weren't for her parents' sake, she would have drawn a clear line from the so-called Wilson family. Charlie was also extremely cold in his heart. Old Mrs. Wilson, Noah Wilson, Harold, 3 generations are all idiots. Why do they think that you can still cooperate with Emgrand Group? As Charlie drove away from Wilson's house, Jacob said angrily, I knew that my mother and eldest brother's family were so cold-blooded, so I shouldn't have helped them so much. Claire sighed in the co-pilot, and said, with their style, even if the Wilson family has a big foundation, they will be ruined. The mother-in-law Elaine said indignantly, the key is that we have helped them so much. Isn't the Emgrand Group's contract awarded for the first time? Now it is cheaper for them. Charlie said indifferently, Mom, they will kill themselves if they do many injustices, and they will not end well. The Wilson family's current reliance is nothing more than cooperation with the Emgrand Group, and they don't know that the Emgrand Group belongs to them. Offending him, still want to make money from Emgrand Group? Daydreaming. As long as he gave Doris a phone call, the Wilson family would be defeated. Jacob touched the half-dry blood on his head, and muttered, who would have thought that the Wilson family was so overwhelming that our family hadn't had a chance to live in the villa sent by the White family. They had to grab it clearly. Bully. With that said, Jacob's eyes lit up, and he said to Charlie, good son-in-law, you take us to Thompson. I always remember that villa and want to see it again. Claire said, Dad, this is almost home, so what else to see? Isn't that villa not under renovation yet? Lebo is still looking at it. Jacob said, oh, I want to go take a good look, otherwise I can't sleep. Charlie can naturally understand Jacob's mentality. It's like a person who can't afford a car suddenly has a top-notch luxury car. Even if he doesn't drive, he always wants to take a look at it in the parking lot. So he said to Claire, since Dad wants to see it, let's go and see it, just to see if there are any decoration ideas. You can talk to Lebo. Jacob smiled and said, Charlie still understands my mind best. Claire sighed helplessly and said, all right, then let's go and have a look. Charlie immediately turned around at the traffic light and drove to Thompson first grade. Charlie parked the car in front of Thompson's villa, and when he got out of the car, his brows suddenly frowned. The fence gate of the villa was actually hidden, and there seemed to be noisy sounds inside. Seeing that Charlie was silent, Claire asked in confusion, what's the matter? Charlie said, it doesn't seem to be right, I'll go in and have a look. After all, Charlie took the lead to walk a few steps quickly into the yard. As soon as he entered the yard, he found several bodyguards dressed in black, throwing some furniture out of the villa. Jacob exclaimed, "It's from the Wilson family." Charlie's complexion suddenly became gloomy. These people in the Wilson family were really lingering. They didn't trouble them yet, but they came to the door first. "Who allowed you to come in?" Charlie scolded coldly and rushed up quickly. When several bodyguards saw Charlie, their faces were panicked. At this time, Harold's Drake voice came from the main hall. "I let them in." Harold walked arrogantly with a crowbar in his left hand and thick gauze in his right hand. "Charlie, you rubbish, now you have been driven out of the Wilson family. Of course, this Thompson first-class villa must stay in the Wilson family. I am here to collect the villa keys today." Claire gritted her teeth and said, "You are too much. Forcing Charlie to surrender the villa is not a success, now you have to grab it." Jacob also said angrily, "Harold, the villa belongs to my son-in-law, no one can take it away." Harold spit, and cursed, "Draft, Claire, who do you think you are? You are now a bereaved dog driven out of the house. Are you qualified to talk to me?" As he said, Harold picked up the crowbar again, pointed at Jacob and continued to curse, "You have an old thing, do you think you are still my uncle? Hurry up and get off, otherwise, I'll break your leg." Charlie was so angry that he said coldly, "Where is Uncle Lebo?" Harold stepped forward and laughed, "Isn't there an old master who guards the house in the villa? I got rid of him. I can't beat him anymore, let him know from now on, who is the real owner of the villa." "You hit Lebo." Charlie's eyes were cold. Although Lebo was from the previous White family, he let him be in charge of this villa and he will be his own in the future. Moreover, Uncle Lebo is honest and loyal and respectful to him. More importantly, he is more than 60 years old this year, and he is in his dying years. This Harold shouldn't even let go of an old master, it is really hateful. Harold sneered at this moment and said, "Why, a dog slave who doesn't recognize his master, doesn't beat him hard, how can he know who Master Wade is? There is a saying that when hitting a dog depends on Master Wade. He must hit a dog now, yes. In order to let his master know who is the one who can't afford it after all." Harold laughed arrogantly and his face was full of revenge pleasure. Charlie was already so angry that he punched him without hesitation. Boom! Harold couldn't dodge, and was hit by an iron fist on the bridge of his nose. He suddenly spurted from his nose and screamed in pain. "Why are you still stunned? Give me all. I want this waste to die." Harold stepped back frantically like a dog, and shouted at the bodyguards. The bodyguards took out long knives from their waists one after another, and rushed towards Charlie viciously. "Charlie, I know you can fight, but what if you can't fight again? I want to see if you have a hard skin or a hard knife." Seeing this, Claire and Jacob looked pale. Charlie can fight, but after all, he has a flesh and blood body. The opponent is the Wilson family bodyguard with a long knife. How could he win? Charlie didn't care, his face was cold, without the slightest change. You want my life even with these stinky fish and shrimps. After all, Charlie's speed was like a ghost, shuttled among the bodyguards of the Wilson family. Even if the bodyguards of the Wilson family held a long knife, they couldn't touch the corner of his clothes at all. And Charlie, like a butterfly wearing a flower, started to attack while evading. He just throws a fist casually, he can easily make a sound of breaking through the sky, full of momentum. Although the bodyguards were all retired special forces and they also had long swords, they were not opponents at all when facing Charlie. In the blink of an eye, everyone was knocked to the ground by Charlie. No one knows exactly how he did it, because they couldn't see Charlie's moves at all, and these bodyguards had already been knocked to the ground. Moreover, Charlie was very angry when he took the shot, so he didn't have any sympathy for these bodyguards, and directly attacked them. All of them had broken hands or feet, all lying in the yard screaming. Harold was already stunned by the sight in front of him. He knew that Charlie was great, but he did not expect that the bodyguards with knives were not Charlie's opponents. Seeing the murderous Charlie, his frightened legs were shaking. Coming to grab the villa was instructed by Mrs. Wilson. Because he had an enmity with Charlie, he took the initiative to ask Mrs. Wilson to take advantage of this opportunity to destroy Charlie. However, he didn't expect that Charlie actually put down all the bodyguards with knives, and he didn't get hurt at all. Is this Charlie still a human? At this time, Charlie had already walked towards Harold with a cold face. He must teach this rude man a lesson and make him pay a painful price. Seeing Charlie walk towards him, Harold's face pales in fright, and he blurted out, "You can't kill me. I am the son of the Wilson family. If you dare to touch my hair, the Wilson family will definitely not let you go." Charlie was indifferent and ruthless. He walked up to Harold step by step, pulled him up directly by the collar, and said coldly, "The Wilson family you mentioned is not even rooted hair in my eyes. Claire, uncle, please let Charlie stop." In a hurry, Harold pleaded to Claire and Jacob in a panic, completely forgetting the appearance of being defiant before. Claire said coldly, "You have what you end up with today, you deserve it." Jacob looked at Claire and then at Harold, struggling very much. Ask yourself, Jacob has been completely disappointed with the people of the Wilson family. Although Harold is his nephew, he doesn't care about family affection, so why should he care? But after all, the Wilson family still had some power. If Charlie really killed Harold, he would definitely usher in crazy revenge from the Wilson family. Thinking of this, Jacob said helplessly, "Charlie, give him a lesson." Charlie thought for a moment, then coldly nodded, and pressed Harold to the ground. The gravel plunged directly into his face, and the blood could not stop flowing down. I can spare your life, but you have annoyed me. The death penalty is unavoidable, and the living sin cannot escape." With that, Charlie punched him in the lower abdomen. This punch was full of force and directly hit Harold's groin. Although Harold is just an ordinary person, he doesn't have any martial arts cultivation skills, but this punch is enough to destroy his ability in that area. From now on, this kid will become an incompetent man. Harold only felt the punch coming over at this time. It was the most painful pain in the world. Let him lie on the ground in pain and roll, and he doesn't know what sequelae this punch will bring to him. Afterwards, Charlie immediately called the community security, arrested all the people and sent them to the bureau, and then looked at Lebo's injuries. Fortunately, Uncle Lebo only suffered some skin injuries, but it was not a major problem, and Charlie was relieved. However, Charlie was extremely angry at the Wilson family. Since the Wilson family is so disgusting, they must not blame him now. They arrived home. Jacob sat on the sofa. The bloodstains on his face had been dealt with, but he still had a blue nose and a swollen face. There was a bruise on his forehead. He was also in a trance and his head was dizzy. Today, the eldest brother ordered the bodyguard to beat him badly. He felt cold and uncomfortable, and he is still angrily. Claire rubbed medicine on his forehead and said, "Dad, Charlie has already helped you out, so don't take it too seriously." Jacob sighed and said, "I'm chilling. My mother, my brother, none of them treat me as their own." After that, Jacob said again, "Claire, now they have driven you out of the Wilson group, what are your plans next?" Claire said, "Plan? I'll find a job first." Seeing this, Charlie didn't speak, but walked to the balcony and called Solomon. As soon as he spoke, Charlie asked him, "Your nephew Gerald, is there a marriage contract with Wendy?" "Yes." Solomon hurriedly asked, "Mr. Wade have any instructions?" Charlie said coldly, "I have broken up with the Wilson family. If your white family is still intermarried with the Wilson family, it will not give me a good impression. If there are any contradictions then, don't blame me for being impolite." When Solomon heard this, he suddenly became nervous and blurted out, "Mr. Wade, don't get me wrong. Our white family has long wanted to regret the marriage. If it weren't for Mr. Wade as the son-in-law of the Wilson family, how could we marry a woman like Wendy? Don't worry, I will arrange someone to go there and notify the Wilson family to dissolve the engagement." Charlie nodded and said with satisfaction, "It's up to you." Solomon hurriedly said, "Mr. Wade, don't worry, I will look forward to everything in the future of my white family." "Yeah." Charlie said lightly, "Okay, do it now." "Okay, Mr. Wade." Didn't the Wilson family want to go to the white family? In this case, let their wishful thinking come to nothing. Subsequently, Charlie called Doris of the Emgrand group. The Wilson family is now a street dog, and they have to fight harder. As soon as the call was connected, Charlie said coldly, "Doris, now announce to the public that Emgrand Group has suspended all cooperation with Wilson Group, and will always exclude them from the scope of cooperation. Doris asked in surprise, "Mr. Wade, this is the company of the young grandma's family, did they do so much harm to Ms. Clare?" Charlie said indifferently, "My wife has broken with them, and they will have nothing to do with me and my wife in the future." Only then did Doris understood, and immediately blurted out, "Don't worry, Mr. Wade, I know. I'll make a statement." In this way, the Wilson family is completely finished. Isn't little Lady Wilson arrogant? Then she will be left with nothing. After hanging up the phone, Charlie went back to the living room and looked at Jacob. He saw that Jacob's eye sockets were swollen, and the bruise on his forehead was getting worse and worse. "I'm afraid it won't be eliminated in 1.5 months." And he could see that Jacob not only suffered trauma, but also some impacts on his brain. There was slight congestion in his skull. It is best to go to the hospital for craniotomy to remove blood clots. Otherwise, over time, this intracranial hematoma will be a time bomb, and maybe one day it will suddenly erupt, and may lead to death. However, Charlie was afraid that Claire would panic, and temporarily concealed this matter. He stood up and said, "I'll go out and buy some medicinal materials to treat Dad." Many medical techniques are recorded in the 9 profound heaven scriptures. There is a prescription that can relieve depression and activate blood circulation, which can cure the situation of the father-in-law. Claire asked curiously, "What kind of medicinal materials can be bought? Will it work? Or should we go to the hospital?" Charlie smiled slightly and said, "No need to go to the hospital. Doctors will deliberately scare and make things serious. Dad would be anxious after hearing this. I have a prescription that is very effective for bruises." Claire nodded then. When Charlie opened the door of the room, an acquaintance happened to come outside the door. It turned out to be Qin Gang. He frowned, looked at Qin Gang and asked, "Why are you here?" When Qin Gang saw Charlie, he hurriedly smiled and said, "Mr. Wade, I heard that you encountered something today, so I collected some medicinal materials and brought them over for you to have a look." After speaking, a bodyguard behind him stepped forward and respectfully presented a red wooden box. Qin Gang opened the lid and smiled respectfully, "Mr. Wade, please take a look." In the box there was an old wild ginseng with a thick arm, as well as purplish red and shiny Ganoderma lucidum, as well as several expensive medicinal materials on the market, which are not found in ordinary traditional medicine stores. Charlie glanced at it. Although these medicinal materials are precious, they don't contain much spiritual energy, but they are better than nothing. It just so happened that he also had to prepare pills for promoting blood circulation and swimming, and these medicinal materials just happened to come in handy. Charlie nodded faintly and said, "Give it to me." Qin Gang hurriedly took the box and said, "Thanks to Mr. Wade's guidance, everything is going well in the Qin family now, and the business has doubled in the past 2 days, all thanks to Mr. Wade's credit. In the future, if Mr. Wade needs anything from the Chin family, please feel free. Chin must do his best to fulfill it. Charlie said, then you continue to pay attention to me. If you have good medicinal materials, please bring them to me. They are really useful. Yes. After Chin Gang agreed, he immediately said, Mr. Wade, if nothing is wrong, can you come to the house to enjoy the noodles and have a home-cooked meal? Charlie said indifferently, someday, there is something wrong at home now. Okay. Chin Gang said hurriedly, then I won't bother. After speaking, he left. Charlie also turned around and returned home. Jacob's headache was unbearable, so Claire helped him to a nearby traditional medicine acupuncture center, wanting to massage and promote blood circulation. Charlie said to him, Dad, it's not suitable for you walking indiscriminately right now, so let's take a break. A friend just delivered medicinal materials. I will prepare a little pill for you. It should have a good effect. Jacob asked wonderingly, Charlie, do you still have the ability to cure diseases and prescribe medicine? Charlie said, I learned a little bit of it before. He could hardly say that he had read the 9 profound heaven scriptures and knew that there was a medicine pill. This is a lost traditional medicine prescription. It can not only remove blood congestion in the brain, but also has a miraculous effect on serious brain diseases such as cerebral infarction and stroke. If a pill for dispersing blood and heart relief is formulated, for Jacob, it will naturally cure the disease. But Jacob was a little worried. He said embarrassingly, Charlie, it's not that your dad doesn't believe you. You are okay in fighting. You can't learn to treat illness and save people by watching TV. As he said, he coughed twice and said, well, let Claire take me to the hospital. Charlie smiled slightly and said, okay, if you can't believe me, you can go to the hospital to try it first. If it works, it's a good thing. Jacob hurriedly said, it is not that I can't believe you. It is a little bit painful right now. I will go and see a doctor first. After speaking, he said to Claire, Claire, let's go. Claire nodded and helped Jacob to stand up and they went out. Charlie walked into the kitchen and began to make prescriptions. According to the records on the 9 profound heaven scriptures, this medicine is very effective. Jacob only had a slight blood flow in his brain. To get the drug, Charlie subtracted a few medicinal materials before starting to make it. The pill was developed by the famous traditional medicine Dr. Simiao in the Thompson dynasty. His widely circulated works are Kyunjin Prescriptions and Thompson Materia Medica, and the Simiao's medical classics are his memorials of medical practice in the past dynasties, and many clinical records are recorded. Experience. These classics are also included in the 9 profound heaven scriptures. Compared with the previous 2 medical books, this Simiao's medical classics is more clinically valuable, but not many people know it. Now it has been completely lost, and most traditional medicine practitioners have not even heard of this name. According to the prescriptions in the medical classics, Charlie quickly prepared a box of walnut-sized honey pills with 6 pills in total. As soon as the pills were prepared, Claire helped Jacob back. Jacob still had pain on his face, and he became increasingly uncomfortable walking. Claire was also a little worried, and said, "Dad, if it's not possible, let's go to the hospital for a look, what do you think?" Jacob waved his hand. "Oh, I don't want to go to the hospital anymore. It's too much trouble. I have to take a blood test and a urine test, and I have to take a film. Sometimes all is right and something is wrong. Let's help me sit on the sofa for a while." Jacob went to the Traditional Medicine Museum just now for an acupuncture massage, but he didn't expect that it wouldn't work at all. His head became more painful. At this time, he just wanted to sit down and rest quickly, otherwise he might faint. At this moment, Charlie walked out carrying the pill he had just configured. Claire heard the smell of medicine floating in the air, and she asked in surprise, "Charlie, are you boiling medicine?" Charlie pointed to the honey pill in his hand and said, "Dad, this pill can invigorate blood and remove blood stasis, and the effect is very good. You can take one and try it." He picked up the pill and looked at it. A particularly fresh medicinal scent came into his nostrils, making him feel refreshed. He asked in surprise, "You made this pill?" "Yes," Charlie said, "I just made it." Jacob asked again, "Have you studied medicine?" Charlie said, "I used to learn from an old master sweeping the floor in an orphanage. His ancestor was a traditional medicine doctor." Jacob said with a look of disbelief, "Really? Can the things taught by the old sweeping man work?" "It is guaranteed to be effective. You can try it. The medicine will cure the disease." Jacob felt a little nervous, but when he thought of his current situation, he couldn't bear the pain, so he took the pills in 2 mouthfuls. Before Claire asked about the origin of Qing pills, he saw that Jacob had already taken it, and quickly asked, "Dad, how do you feel?" "It seems that I just ate it and my head really doesn't hurt so much." Jacob was also surprised. This pill seemed unremarkable, but after he took it, it seemed as if a breath of fresh air reached his forehead, his nose opened up, his head became clearer, and the pain in the back of his head actually disappeared a lot. Jacob asked happily, "Charlie, where did you buy this medicine?" Charlie said, "Qin Gang just sent some medicinal materials over, so I just fiddled with them." Jacob continued to admire, "This President Qin is such a good person. Knowing that I was injured, he even delivered medicine specially." Claire also said, "Everyone in Oris Hill City said that Qin Gang is kind, and that seemed to be the case. If the Uncle Noah was like President Qin with kind thoughts, how could it be like this?" When he mentioned Noah, Jacob looked down, waved his hand and said, "Don't mention him." Jacob returned to the house to rest after taking the medicine. Charlie saw that Claire's face was not so good, and asked, "You should rest soon, don't get angry, Wilson family, you will definitely pay the price for today's affairs. At this moment, the Wilson family compound. The old Mrs. Wilson and Noah Wilson are waiting for news that Harold has successfully seized the villa. But unexpectedly, they received the news that Harold was seriously injured and arrested and detained by the police on the grounds that he was suspected of breaking into private houses and intentionally hurting others. This made old Mrs. Wilson particularly angry. She angrily said, "This must be done by Claire and her family again. It's really unreasonable." Noah was very nervous when he heard that his son was injured, and said angrily, "Mom, Jacob is so arrogant. You have to call the shots for Harold. After all, he has always listened to your sayings. What you say, he will look at you. It's natural." The Lady Wilson snorted coldly, and said, "What if their family has that villa? Isn't it an empty shell? No money, no power, how can they fight us? Not only do they want to take the villa, it will cost them a painful price if they get it." As he was talking, someone came in to pass a message. "Lady Wilson, Solomon, the head of the White family, has just arrived." "Oh," the Lady Wilson blurted out, "please come in quickly. I was just about to ask you why he should give the villa to that family. White family are also our in-laws, so how can he break his elbow?" As she was talking, Solomon flew over with his nephew Gerald. The two of them came over, and they had retired. In fact, Gerald was a little tired of losing Wendy. The main reason was that Wendy's family really couldn't make it to the table. So, when the uncle said that he would divorce, he did not object, even let the uncle be master here. Seeing the two coming in, Mrs. Wilson hurriedly greeted them and said, "Oh, my in-laws are here, why don't you say hello in advance?" Solomon sneered, and said, "Mrs. Wilson is so majestic." Old Mrs. Wilson didn't know what Solomon's words meant. She squeezed out an awkward smile, and said, "Why are you saying this?" After that, she said to Noah quickly, "It's rare that President White came to the door in person. Don't you come here quickly and invite President White to sit in? This is your future in-laws." "I won't come in." Solomon waved his hand with a cold face, and said, "I came here today, mainly to talk about the marriage between the two families." Mrs. Wilson hurriedly said, "Please rest assured, Mr. White, the courtesy we should have at the wedding banquet, there will be no less. Please say it, Mr. White, if you have any requirements." Solomon said coldly, "Then I will make a long story short. Our White family has recently thought about it and felt that the different ways are not conspiring for us to get along together. Therefore, this time we are here to cancel the marriage contract between Gerald and your Wendy." "What? Do you want to cancel the marriage contract?" The old Mrs. Wilson and Noah Wilson were both shocked. Wendy behind her was silly, and she blurted out, "Why? Gerald and I have booked the big day." After speaking, she asked Gerald, "Gerald, what is going on?" Gerald stretched out his hands awkwardly, and said, "This is a family arrangement, and I can't help it." The Wilson family is about to collapse. The relationship between the two families was booked long ago, and even the marriage has been booked. Now all relatives and friends know about it and are waiting for the wedding next month. At this time, the White family actually wanted to cancel. The old Mrs. Wilson is looking forward to getting married with the White family, and relying on the White family to fly to the top. Now the White family is about to cancel it with a single sentence. Doesn't this vanish all her big dreams? Moreover, although Wendy and Gerald are not married, they have been together for a long time. Some time ago, the two children were careless and got pregnant unexpectedly. In order not to make gossips, Lady Wilson asked Wendy to knock off the child and prepare to wait for marriage. Unexpectedly, White's family will now come directly to retreat. Isn't this playing with the granddaughter for so long? Moreover, she also made her belly bigger once, so she was going to leave? She was very angry and tremblingly asked, "Mr. White, why are doing this? My Wilson family has not offended you. Moreover, we have always treated Gerald as our own son. He had been with Wendy before. For a child, I also think that the reputation of the two families should be taken into consideration, and we can't get pregnant before unmarried, so I advocated that Wendy had the child knocked out. You can't do this to her, right?" Speaking of the child, Wendy burst into tears. Solomon sneered and said, "If this matter is to be blamed, you can't blame Gerald, just blame your old Mrs. Wilson for being too shameless." This old Mrs. Wilson didn't expect. Solomon cursed directly on her head and couldn't help asking, "What happened to you, Lady Wilson?" Solomon hummed, "The villa I gave to Charlie, you guys were going to grab it too. For people with no character like you, how can I become relatives with you?" The old Mrs. Wilson was dumbfounded, and blurted out, "My family, this is a matter between us and Charlie, so why it bothers you?" Solomon said coldly, "You Lady Wilson is really shameless. That villa is my honor to Mr. Charlie, you dare to snatch it? You don't look at it, you're a shit." Mrs. Wilson felt a sharp pain in her chest. This Solomon doesn't give her respect. If the family is rich, can they insult me like this? However, she did not dare to refute it at once, because she knows that she is at a loss in this matter. Moreover, she really did not expect that Solomon would respect Charlie Rubbish so much. This in the end is why. At this time, Wendy sat on the ground, watching Gerald crying and said, "Gerald, I was pregnant with your child, you can't leave me." Gerald on the side said lightly, "If you are to blame, blame your grandma and your father, oh yes, and your brother." As he said, Gerald said again, "Also, you even beat Lebo. You know that Lebo has been in my White's house for 40 years and saved my father's life. And he was the one who looked after me when I was young. I was saved by Uncle Lebo when I stumbled into the water. Otherwise, I would be dead now. Uncle Lebo is no different from my grandfather to me. You actually beat him to rob the villa. How outrageous! A shameless family cannot be like my family. I won't be your son-in-law, and don't even want you to be our daughter-in-law." Noah Wilson stood aside, his face pale. Old Mrs. Wilson also had a frightened expression on her face. They thought that Uncle Lebo was just a subordinate, but they didn't expect it to be so important to the White family. Old Mrs. Wilson regrets that her intestines are all green at this time. If she knew that, what villa would she still rob? The villa was not snatched and ruined the granddaughter's marriage. The key is that I still count on relying on the White family to fly and grow up. Now all the chickens have been beaten. Thinking of this, the Lady Wilson almost burst into tears. Sitting paralyzed on the ground, Wendy yelled at the old Mrs. Wilson angrily, "I blame you for the dead Lady Wilson. I blame you for ruining my happiness." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.